This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So as we're getting closer to the Yom Tov of Purim, so we're going to try to explore some of the interesting aspects of Purim in conjunction with this week's Parsha. We have a fascinating medrash, a very well-known medrash. The medrash tells us, Rabbi Akiva Rabbi Akiva was sitting, and he was darshaning, he was giving a drush, he was giving a speech. Now, obviously, every good rabbi, when the rabbi gets up to speak, people fall asleep, right? It's only natural. The congregation was dozing off. You see, that's why I don't feel bad. Because even Rabbi Akiva, he got up to give a drush, and people were dozing off. He wanted to wake them up. So what did he do? Did he pour water on them? Maybe, start... So he wanted to tell them something very interesting. What could Rabbi Akiva come up with? So he said the following. Amar, Ma'ra'asa Esther shetimloich al sheva ve'esrim me'ah Medina. What merit did Esther have that she ruled over 127 provinces? What was her merit? It's a big zechus. Right? The Gemara says, Achashverosh is malach b'kippah. He ruled over the whole globe. Every known area of the world, Achashverosh ruled over. What zechus did Esther have to be the ruler over 127 medinos? Ela tavai Esther, let Esther come. Shahoisa bas bita shel Sarah. Esther, of course, was the great-great-granddaughter of Sarah Imenu. Shahoisa kuf v'chaf v'zayin, who lived 127 years, right? How many years did Sarah live? 127 years. The Timloich al Kuf v'chav v'zayin medinos, and she'll rule over in her merit 127 provinces. In other words, Rabbi Akiva is sitting there, he's giving the drasha. Maybe it was Shabbos morning, people were tired after a whole week, and they just sat through a whole day, a whole laning, and they're tired, they're hungry, everyone's dozing off, so Rabbi Akiva has to give them, his best material. He has to really shock them and startle them. So what does he say? Why was Esther Zocha to rule over 127 medinos? In the merit of Sarah, who lived 127 righteous years.
What does it mean? I'm going to control 127 countries too?
Yeah, Mirza Hashem, God should bless you with 127 righteous years.
Yeah, but Sarah Imenu is also Imenu, It's not only Esther.
Okay, in the merit of Sarah, Esther ruled over 127 provinces. So there are a few things we have to try to understand here. Right? Remember this, Andrew? In the merit, Rabbi Akiva wanted to wake everybody up. So he said, why was Esther Zocha to rule over 127 medinos? In the merit of Sarah. So the first thing we have to think about is, could somebody please tell me what is so interesting about that? Wow, really, really interesting. If you're tired, if you slept 5 hours the night before, this isn't going to do it. I'm sorry, It ain't going to do it. I could think of a lot more interesting things to talk about, Talk about Purim. You want to talk about how Haman's daughter poured the garbage over the top of her roof, thinking that it was Mordechai, and really it was Haman. I mean, there are more interesting things in the Megillah than the 127 medinos that Esther ruled over. So this is a question raised by the Chassam Sofer. Now, by the way, this Chassam Sofer, very hard to find. It's in the introduction to the Chassam Sofer to Masechta Chulin. Chassam Sofer wants to know, we're not going to have time to read inside. First of all, what in the world is so interesting about the fact that Esther ruled over 127 provinces in the merit of Sarah? That's so interesting. I just said now, and 5 people are sleeping. No, I'm just joking. It's not that interesting. Okay, number two. Listen to this one. Only Chassam Sofer could come up with this question. How many years did Avraham Avinu live? Anybody remember?
186. No.
How many?
137, because we weren't supposed to see...
So Rav Babakanov says 175 years, right? 175 years. At what age did Abraham recognize God?
He said 3, and some say more.
Some say 3. The Gemara says 3. There's a medrash that says 48. Okay? So let's just think for a moment. According to the medrash that Abraham recognized God at age 48, and he lived till age 175, how many righteous years did Abraham have? 127. So why is Rabbi Akiva so sure that Esther ruled over 127 provinces in the merit of Sarah. Maybe it was in the merit of Abraham. Abraham also had 127 righteous years, the same number as Sarah. Sarah was a tzaddikas from the time she was born, probably. Abraham, according to the Medrash that he recognized God at 48, he was only righteous 127 years. So maybe Esther ruled over 127 provinces in the merit of Abraham. Interesting question. And then asked the Chassam Sofer, could somebody please tell me what big zechus is it that Esther's husband ruled over 127 medinos? Why is that a zechus for her? What's the big zechus?
But he ruled it before he got married with her.
But now she's the one who is married to this big guy. Well, what's the big zechus? What does she care? Let's say Achashverosh would have ruled over 120 medinos. That would have been a lesser zechus. What Esther cares, how many medinos Achashverosh rules over? It's better for Esther if it's 127 or 100 or 50? Well, what's the chiluk? What difference does it make? So these are some items we're going to try to understand. Okay? Another thing, Rabbi say, Purim is coming up. Where does the Torah talk about Purim? Anybody know? Nowhere. Purim is from the Rabbanan, right? Purim came after the Torah. It doesn't say anywhere in the Chumash that there's a Yom Tov of Purim. In the Chumash, it talks about Shabbos, it talks about Pesach, it talks about Shavuos, it talks about Sukkot, it talks about Shmini Atzeres, it talks about Rosh Hashanah, it talks about Yom Kippur. It doesn't talk about Chanukah, and it doesn't talk about Purim. However, let's turn for a moment to Parshas Emor, page 682. Page 682. Parshas Emor talks about the various Moadim, the various holidays that God gave us. And on page 682 in chapter 23, the Chumash says, "Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe lemor, daber al bnei Yisrael v'yamarta alehem moyadei Hashem asher tikro osam l'kroi kodesh Elohei moyadei." Here are the holidays. Number 1, Shabbos. A little further down on the page, Pesach. All the way on the bottom of the page, Sfiras HaOmer. The next page continues to talk about Sfira. Then you have Shavuos. Then you have on page 686, Chamishi, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres. Turn to page 690. One of the great Rishonim was the Roikeach, Rebbe Lezer mi Garmaiza. We once, if you remember, on Tisha B'Av, we spoke about, really, Garmaiza was originally worms, right? Varmaija was worms. You know, the 3 great communities of Germany are Kehilos Shum, spires, worms, and Magensa, Mainz. Originally, his region of Germany was called Varmaija. Originally the area was called Garmaiza. His name was Rebbe Lezer mi Garmaiza. It was switched to worms because of a certain legend that happened, that there was a great dragon that would consume an individual every single day until they fed him, until a certain tzaddik came along and vanquished the dragon, and they renamed the entire region from Garmaiza to Varmaiza after this dragon. Okay, in any event, listen to what the Rekeach says. If this is the Parsha that talks about all the Yom Tovim, there has to be a remez to Chanukah and Purim. Fine. So look on page 690. Right after we have the Yom Tov of Sukkot, look in Perek Chav Daled. Vayedaber Hashem al Moshe lemor, Tzaves b'nei Yisrael v'yikchu elecha shemen zayis zach. Which holiday is that? Chanukah. Beautiful. So right after all the Yom Tovim Midoraisa, we have a remez to Chanukah. Says a Rokeach, what about Purim? Look in the next chapter. V'lakachta soiles, you'll take fine flour. V'yafisa also, you'll bake it, and it talks about the lechem hapanim, the showbread. So the Rokeach, the Rokeach says is a remez to Purim.
How come?
The bread is a remez to Purim. So God will say, how is it a remez to Purim? Simple explanation is, since, as opposed to Chanukah, when there's no mitzvah to have a Suda, on Purim there's a mitzvah to have a Suda. So the bread is sort of a remez to Sudas Purim. The bread is a remez to Sudas Purim.
A little bit weak because you're eating every all the time.
It's a little bit weak, right?
Yeah.
The remez is a little bit weak. So we're going to try to explain perhaps how this is really a remez, how the word soles is a remez to Purim. How is fine flour, how is flour a remez to Purim? Okay? So these are a few issues we'd like to deal with. Number one, why when Rabbi Akiva wanted to wake up his Talmidim, he would wake them up with the chazal that the reason why Esther ruled over 127 Medinos is in the merit of Sarah. First of all, that's not really that interesting. Number two, maybe it's not in the merit of Sarah, maybe it's in the merit of Abraham. Number three.
What difference?
What?
What difference does 127 of
What difference does it make? What difference does it make to Esther how many Medinos her husband ruled over? And then we want to know exactly how is this a remez in the Torah to the Yom Tif of Purim, v'lakachta soles, how is soles a remez to the Yom Tif of Purim? Okay, so to try to answer these questions, we're going to turn to this week's Parsha. Just want to mention that the learning we're doing tonight is L'iloi Nishmas, Reb Tzvi Malchin ben Avraham, L'iloi Nishmaso, and L'zeich Nishmas, Oren's father, Rabbi Yisrael ben Aaron, the Neshama Shav Aliyah, and both individuals should be Melitze Yosher for all the respective families. Abi has called Tzedek. Okay, so in this week's Parsha we find something very interesting. V'hanesiim, look at number 3. V'hanesiim heviu eis avnei hashoyam v'eis avnei hamiluim lo'efad v'lachoshen. The Nesiim brought the shoham stones, the miluim stones for the ephod and for the choshen.
Why are you missing a yud?
Very good. First of all, Gabi's picking on the fact the word Nesiim is spelled incorrectly. When you spell the word Nesiim, it should be spelled with a yud, right? So Rashi mentions this. Now first let's just discuss what happened. After all the Jews donated the Zahav, the Kesef, the Nechoshes, the Tcheles, the Agaman, and we learned this a few weeks ago, the Nesiim came along and they donated what is considered the most valuable of all the donations, the precious stones needed for the Choshen, the breastplate that the Kohen Gadol wore, and the stones for the Miluim that he wore on his shoulders. Now Rashi wants to know, look at number 4. Amar Reb Nassan said, Maro Nesiim lehisnadev bechanukas hamizbeach b'tchila. Why did the Nesiim donate to the Mizbeach first? We're going to find that in Parshas Naso, when they inaugurated the Mizbeach, the very first people to donate to the Mizbeach were these Nesiim. They were the first ones to bring karbanos. Uve meleches ha-mishkan. And yet when it came to donating to the Mishkan, lahisnadvu b'tchila, they donated last. After all, Klal Yisrael donated the gold, the silver, and so on. After everything, the Nesiim came along. What happened? Elakach amru Nesiim. This is what the princes said. Yisnadvu tzibor mashem isnadvin. Let the congregation donate what they need to. In other words, in the Nesiim's mind, in order to donate a Mishkan, they needed $10 million. So the Nesiim said, look, let everybody donate what they need to. Umashem echasrin anu, and whatever umashem echasrin, and whatever is missing, anu mashlimin also, we'll make up the difference. Seems very generous, especially to build a Mishkan you need a lot of resources. They figure they'll probably be lacking. Whatever is needed, we will be mashlim. Kivan sheshlimut tzibur asakol. But lo and behold, v'hamalacha hayisadaya, the Jewish people donated more than necessary for the Mishkan. Okay, shenemar v'hamalacha hayisadaya. Amru Nesiim, so the Nesiim said, ma'aleinu lasois. What should we do? There's nothing left for us. The gold, it's taken care of. The silver is taken care of. The blue wool is taken care of. Even the skin of the tachash, they got. Everything. There's nothing left for us to do. Hevius Avnei Hashoam, they donated for the Avnei Hashoam. Therefore, when it came later on to inaugurating the Mizbeach, they said, this time we're not going to make the same mistake. We'll donate first. Okay? Lekach hisnadvu b'chanukas hamizbeach tchila. Therefore, they donated for the inauguration of the Mizbeach first. Says Rashi, Ulefi shenes atzlu mitchila, since they were lazy and they sort of postponed and said, we'll donate at the end, whatever's missing we'll donate. They exhibited laziness. Nechsara ois mishemam, they were missing a yud. Vehanesiim ksiv, the word Nesiim is spelled without a yud. And so again, if you look at...
It's something that repeats in the Torah. Every time that somebody doesn't do the right things, they're missing a letter from it.
Not every time, but it happens.
It happens.
It happens. It happens. Now let's just think about this Rashi for a moment. Imagine if in a shul they were having an appeal, and they said, we need to raise $100 million. Someone gets up, whatever is missing, I'll donate. Sounds pretty generous. Sounds pretty...
Nobody will donate anything.
Right? Very nice. Shkayach. Okay? So what was really wrong with what the Nesiim did? It sounds like they had very lofty, noble intentions. So maybe they did. But Rashi then goes on to almost contradict himself and say, they were lazy. So, what's going on? What was really going behind? What was going on in their minds, in their hearts? Did they have real noble intentions, or was this laziness? Or was it both? Let's try to understand that. By the way, why were they missing the Yud and not a different letter? Why not the Aleph? Right? The Nesiim is spelled without a Yud. Why the Yud?
Because you cannot spell it anymore. If you're going to remove the A Aleph, you're not going to be able to say Nesiim.
That's true. Good point. But we'll see another reason. We'll see another reason. Look at the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel. By the way, Rabbi say, where in the world did the Nesiim get these Avnei Shoam from? Where did they get it from?
How that gold and...
So the gold we know they took from Egypt. Where do they have these precious stones from? Listen to this. Look at number 5. The Targum Yonasan ben Uziel says, "Va'anane shemaya ozlin lepishon." The anane hakavod, the clouds that hovered over the Jewish people, went on a mission. They went to Pishon. V'dalyon mitaman yos avnei bor levas. They uprooted these stones from a certain region. So it's like, they were on a spy mission. The clouds, they went on a mission, and they found these stones, and they deposited it at the front door of the Nesiim. By the way, in Hebrew, how do you say cloud?
Anan.
Or Nesiim. There's a pasuk that says, Nesiim, v'geshem ayin, you have clouds but no rain. That's like a man who he announces he's going to give a big donation and the money doesn't come. So here it's the clouds, you have big dark clouds. It looks like, a big rain is going to fall. Looks like a big rain is going to fall. It's like somebody who makes a big pledge and he doesn't come through with it. So the word Nesiim could also mean clouds. That's why the Yud is taken out. Nesiim without a Yud could mean clouds. V'hanesiim heviu, the clouds brought Avnei Shoam ve'Avnei Miluim. That fits in very well with the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel. The reason why the letter Yud is missing is because it's the clouds that brought it. So Rabbi say, it's very interesting. If you look in Parshas Truma, when the Torah lists all the various items that were donated to the Mishkan, gold, silver, copper, blue wool, purple wool, and so forth, the very last item mentioned is what? The Avnei Shoam and the Avnei Miluim. Why? Remember we learned it 2 weeks ago. Right? Because since the Nesiim were lazy in what they brought, even though technically speaking they brought the most valuable item, but in the eyes of Hashem, since they did it with a degree of laziness, it had the least value of everything. Or we said that since the Nesiim did not exert any effort into giving their donation, because the cloud just deposited it at their front door, right? They didn't put any yagia into it, they didn't put any amilos into it. The cloud came, deposited at their front door, UPS service, so they donated it, and therefore in the eyes of Hashem this was not a significant donation. But again, what was the true motivation of the Nesiim? And in general, this really gets us into a very important question. If a person has the opportunity to do a mitzvah, I could do a mitzvah. I could do the mitzvah now. If I do the mitzvah now, I won't be able to do it with so much kavana, with so much hislavos, with so much emotion. I won't be able to concentrate. I won't be able to do it completely properly, but I'll be able to do it. Or I could wait a little bit. In an hour, I'll put on nice clothing, and I'll be able to focus my mind, and I'll be able to muster up the proper thoughts. Is it better to do a mitzvah bezrizos right away, or is it better to do a mitzvah later on, but a mitzvah min hamuvchar in a better way? In other words, is it better just to do it, and this way nothing will happen, you'll make sure you get it done? Or is it better perhaps to delay the mitzvah so that you'll be able to do it in a better oifen, in a better way? And this question, in essence, was asked to the Radvaz. The Radvaz, Reb David ibn Avi Zimra. Rabbi David ibn Abi Zimra lived from 1480 to 1574. Very interesting. 1480 to 1574, he was born in Spain, and his parents and his family was exiled from Spain when he was 13 years old in 1492. They make their way to Tzfas. From there, they make their way to Yerushalayim, and then he moves back to Egypt, where he becomes the Rosh Yeshiva in the academy in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, and he leads the yeshiva in Egypt for 40 years. And among his Talmidim were Rav Betzalel Ashkenazi, the Shita Mekubetzes, and somebody by the name of Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, the Arizal. The Arizal was his Talmud. The Arizal was his Talmud. He was a great halachic authority. He wrote over 2,500 tshuvos. 7 volumes of halachic response are printed from him. 2,500. And many of his tshuvos are left unpublished. Listen to the question. A guy is in jail, okay? He's in jail for good. He's not coming out. And he pleads with the jailmaster, let me out, let me out. I can't do any mitzvahs. I can't put on talis. I can't put on tefillin. Can't hear shofar. I can't fast on Yom Kippur. Nothing. Let me out, let me out. He said, yeah, one day. One day. I'll let you out one day. Which day should he pick?
Saturday.
Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah, you could hear the shofar. Yom Kippur, Purim. Here, look at number 7. She'ela. Ruvain hayachavish b'beis ha'asurim. Ruvain was in jail. Don't get nervous. Whenever we talk about something, a man was in jail. V'lo hayayachal latzeis lehispalo ba'asar. He couldn't go to minyan. V'lasos hamitzos v'hischanin lefnei asar. He pleads with the officer, hegman or the taskmaster. V'lo ava shemaya lahanicha izulasi yom echad b'shana. He'll only let him out one day. Eza yom shiachbotz, whatever day he chooses. So Ruvain asks, Yoreh hamora eza yom mikol yimos hashana yivchar Ruvain haniskar lelechas beis hakneses. Which day should he choose? So the Rabbi goes on to say that there's a certain sage, he writes, who lives in our times, who has drowned himself in the deep waters of this question, and he's drowned. Basically, he did not come out with the right explanation. First, this Chacham wanted to say, wait till Purim, you'll hear the Megillah. And then he wanted to say something else. Says the Radvaz, don't listen to what this guy is talking about. He doesn't know what he's saying. You know which day he should go out? Tomorrow. As soon as possible. Why? Ein ma'avirin es ha-mitzvos. We don't pass over a mitzvah. You go out, if you're only able to go out one day, tomorrow. Pick the immediate day.
We're going to change their mind.
Ein ma'avirin al ha-mitzvos. Ein ma'avirin al ha-mitzvos.
Did you say he gets a mitzvah for waiting until a greater day? Yom Kippur or Purim?
Well, does he get a mitzvah? So the Ravaz is saying, don't wait. Don't wait. Don't wait.
Yeah, the main reason is that, today the Agmon told them to go out. Tomorrow he's going to change his mind.
You mean maybe the Hegmon, if he says, I'll wait till Yom Kippur, maybe
They're going to change their mind.
Maybe he'll change his mind.
Maybe he
But
won't even live till next week.
maybe, okay. Now, the reasoning of the Radvaz isn't that maybe the Hegmon may change his mind. He cites the rule, Ein ma'avirin es ha-mitzvos. When you have the opportunity to do a mitzvah, you don't pass over the mitzvah. Why don't you? Why? But here I have a good reason to wait. I want to do a bigger mitzvah. It's not that I'm lazy and I don't want to daven tomorrow with the minyan. It's that I'd rather daven on Yom Kippur with the minyan. So, but still, the simple explanation of Ein ma'avirin es ha-mitzvos, we don't want to delay, is, like Oren is saying, we don't know you'll be around then. Shema Yamos. You may not be around for Yom Kippur.
What do you say about Khatan that's thinking to get married in half a year from now?
Not a good idea.
Something?
Not a good idea for a lot of reasons.
Okay. Somebody wants to get married. He's planning
Borough Park, you do that all the time.
Oh, a half a year?
to wait half a year.
Oh.
To get married is also a mitzvah, no?
Yeah.
To wait.
I hear it. I can't argue with that. Can't argue with that. Okay, so this is the opinion of the Radbaz. That what? You have the opportunity to do a mitzvah, take the first opportunity. But tomorrow I could do a bigger mitzvah. You'll worry about it then. You do the first available mitzvah.
Isn't it logical if somebody give us $100 today or $1,000 tomorrow? Isn't it better to take us out? Isn't that like what Olam Haba is about, giving up today for something greater tomorrow?
So, okay, so let's say, extending this logic, if I could give either $100 today or $1,000 tomorrow, what would the Radbaz say? $100 today. You do ein ma'avir nasa mitzvah.
What about Olam Haba? What's Olam Haba?
Olam Haba is what Hashem's going to give to you. But what you got to do, what you have to do, you take care of what you have to do right away. Rabbi Sai, does everybody agree with the Radbaz? No, of course not. How can everybody agree? The Chacham Tzvi. Who's the Chacham Tzvi? The father of Rabbi Yaakov Emden. Rabbi the Chacham Tzvi disagrees. And one of the proofs that he cites is, let's say I wanted to do Kiddush Levana on a Wednesday night. Do I do it on a Wednesday night? Usually not. Usually we wait for Matzah Shabbos. Why? Better to do it Matzah Shabbos. What do you mean? Don't delay the mitzvah. No. If you could do the same mitzvah in a better way, wait. It's better to do the mitzvah in a better way than to do it immediately in a lesser way. The Chacham Tzvi brings other rayas. He says, the Gemara has a question. If I could bring the Karban Musaf today, or the Karban Tamid tomorrow. And the Gemara says, well, maybe I should bring the Karban Tamid tomorrow. Why? Because the Karban Tamid is brought every single day. Tadir v'she'eno, tadir kodem. You do something that you do more constantly. So the Chacham Tzvi says, what do you mean? So what if I do it more constantly? But if I could do a mitzvah today, I'm supposed to do the mitzvah today. No. We see from here, says the Chacham Tzvi, it's better to do a mitzvah. Better to do a mitzvah in the best possible way than to sort of compromise the mitzvah, even though I could get it over with and do it immediately. Okay? So we have this machlokas here. You have a choice. I could do a mitzvah today in a compromised way. I could do a mitzvah tomorrow in a much better way, or a greater mitzvah tomorrow. The Radbaz says, Zrizim makdim el mitzvahs. You could get out of jail today. What do you mean? Next week is Rosh Hashanah. Isn't it better to hear the shofar than just to daven with a minyan today? No. You chaparain. You get the mitzvah in right now. You worry about Rosh Hashanah when it comes. Zrizim makdim el mitzvahs. Chacham Tzvi says no. Chacham Tzvi says, wait. You're in jail? Wait for Yom Kippur. Wait for Purim. Wait for the greater mitzvah. How do we paskin? Now I just want to give a little bit of a warning. This shiur is not meant to be taken halacha l'maisa. Okay. The Chayei Adam paskins like the Chacham Tzvi. Better to do a mitzvah in a better possible way.
Like tefillin after Zman Tefillah and stuff like that.
No. That's not a... Oh, what?
Tefillin after Zman Tefillah.
What about...
No, but tefillah, you got it. No, that...
Davening tefillin after Zman Tefillah.
Yeah, that's different. That's like a...
You're not doing the mitzvah of tefillah then.
Yeah.
Right. This is the opportunity.
Yeah, so we're talking about a case where I could do the mitzvah in a better way later. In that case...
That's what you're talking about, not to do the mitzvah at all.
Okay, so, however, the opinion of the Chassam Sofer, and we're going to see, is it's better to do the mitzvah immediately. Even though it's going to be compromised, it's better to do the mitzvah immediately. And therefore, the Chassam Sofer says something fascinating. Chassam Sofer says, why is it better for the guy to go out of jail today than to go out of jail in a week from now to hear the shofar? What's the reasoning? What's the logic? So the Chassam Sofer says like this. You would think the logic is, you may not make it out in a week, right? Shema Yamos. You don't know. Maybe you won't be around. Maybe you won't be around in a week. Better to do the mitzvah today, because maybe you won't be in this world Rosh Hashanah time. You don't know. Chassam Sofer says that's not the reason. You know why that's not the reason? Because think about it. If a person is in jail, and he decides to do the mitzvah today, and he really would have liked to go out of jail for Rosh Hashanah, and he doesn't make it. What is that called? Wanting to do a mitzvah, and an onus happens and you can't do a mitzvah, Hashem considers it like you did it. Whenever a person wants to do a mitzvah, and circumstances occur that don't allow him to do the mitzvah, nenas v'lo yasa, nechshav kilu asa, it's considered like you did it. So the reasoning why you should not pass over a mitzvah is not because circumstances may come up to prevent you from doing the mitzvah. So if they come up, Hashem will treat it like I did the mitzvah. So the reason is not because Shema Yamos, you might die. Says the Chassam Sofer, you know what the reason is? Listen to this. This is almost, you can't even believe such a thing. He says, since it says in Perkei Avos, a person is never allowed to believe in himself, ad yomo, so until the day you die, the person should never say, yeah, me, I'm already a big tzaddik for 20 years now. I never speak Lashon Hara, and I always learn every day, and I'm always nice to my friends, and I always daven with kavanah. I'm such a big tzaddik, I don't have to worry about the Yetzer Hara anymore. You've just become big target for the Yetzer Hara. Anytime you're confident in yourself that the Yetzer Hara is not going to get you, you've already shown that you have the arrogance that the Yetzer Hara has you in his clutches. Never trust yourself. Even Rabbi Yochanan Kohen Gadol, after 80 years of serving as Kohen Gadol, he went off. Even the Gadol Hadar at the end of his life, he could go off. Why did God not say Elokei Avraham until after Avraham passed away? Because God will never associate with the righteous while they're still alive. Because so long as they're alive, maybe they won't be righteous anymore. They could always change. What? The Gadol, the greatest sage in the generation, could veer off? Yeah. We can't be confident in that until they leave this world. Therefore, the Chassam Sofer says, you know why you should not delay doing the mitzvah? Because who says in an hour from now, you'll still be a tzaddik who wants to do the mitzvah? Maybe the Yetzer Hara will get you in his grips and he'll convince you not to do the mitzvah. Sorry.
No, just as therefore you're not supposed to trust human beings. And Al Tiftar.
Oh yeah, Al Tiftar Divim, right? Well, you could. That's even. Don't place your trust in humans. If you have a job, right? Don't place your trust in the boss. Right? Don't trust in the boss. Don't trust. Sometimes people have false illusions that I'll get connected. Right? They have enough connections. Don't put your al tivtachum v'divim. Right? They promise, but God shows you that it's not them. You have to place your trust in Hashem. You can't trust in people.
You cannot even trust your own etzah.
But here it's saying you can't even trust yourself. Can't trust yourself. It's scary. The reason why I need to do the mitzvah, why do I have to go out of jail today and not jail Yom Kippur in a week from now? Maybe in a week from now, the Yetzer Hara will have you completely in his grips. You won't even want to go out of jail for Yom Kippur.
It says that.
1 second. What would the Radvaz say? Here you have the Gadol Hadar in jail. You have the greatest sage in the generation, he's in jail. And he wants to know, should I leave jail today or should I wait till Yom Kippur and 2 days from now? What do we tell him? Go out today. Why? Because maybe in 2 days from now the Yetzer Hara will convince you not to fast on Yom Kippur. Him? Doesn't matter who. No one could trust in themselves. Okay. Here's another illustration of this example. Okay, of this machlekes. It's the day before Tzom Gedalia, right? What day of Tishrei is Tzom Gedalia?
Dalet Tishrei?
This year it was Dalet, right? This year was Dalet. But regularly it's the day after Rosh Hashanah. It's Gimel.
Yeah.
Gimel Tishrei.
Shabbat,
you push it off. Okay. It's the day before Tzom Gedalia. In a week from Tzom Gedalia is what? Yom Kippur. And you have somebody, he's a little bit frail, and he says to the doctor, look, if I fast on Tzom Gedalia, I won't be able to fast on Yom Kippur. I'll be so weak that when Yom Kippur comes, I'll be in ones, and I won't be able to fast. I won't have the strength to fast. And I won't be halachically obligated to fast on Yom Kippur because I'll be in a state where I cannot physically fast. So what should I do? Should I fast Tzom Gedalia and then not fast Yom Kippur? Or should I not fast Tzom Gedalia to be able to fast a fast which is Midoraisa? What would you say?
Tzom Gedalia.
Who says you're going to leave...
So according to the logic of the Radvaz, Doesn't matter that Yom Kippur is a fast midoraisa. You do the mitzvah that's in front of you. Right now you have a mitzvah to fast Tzom Gedaya. Now in general, someone who's sick, he may not have to fast Tzom Gedaya. Then, you'll ask your local rabbi. But assuming that he can, right now he can. So what would the Radbaz say? Fast Tzom Gedaya. Zriza makdim in the mitzvah. Sein ma'avir nasa mitzvahs. You have a mitzvah now. Who says you'll make it to Yom Kippur? What would the Chacham Tzvi say? You wait. Better to do a mitzvah min ha-mufcha. Better to wait and do a greater mitzvah. But the Chassam Sofer...
It's the shtickle lavdavka that the Radbaz would say in that case.
Yeah, we don't know. A lot of...
It's the Rabbanan son, so therefore it could be that he'll only say what he says when it's two deraises.
True. And a lot of people say that even the Radbaz would agree that you would still fast on Yom Kippur. But...
Because of the fact that it's a deraisa?
I'm not sure. Coupled with the fact that if you may not have to fast Tzom Gedalia in a situation where it's going to interfere with Yom Kippur. In other words, Tzom Gedalia is not so chamor that we say you should do it to push off Yom Kippur. It's unclear, but the Stei Chemed brings down, if you look in number 12, Stei Chemed brings down, according to some opinions, this is dependent on the Machlokes, the Radvaz, and the Chacham Tzvi. Okay? So here's our grand finale. Okay, you ready for this? Chassam Sofer says, and the Chassam Sofer paskins, if you have a mitzvah to do, you do it right away, you don't delay, you don't wait, doesn't matter, you could do it better later, Zriza makdim la mitzvos, you have to chaperayim the mitzvah. Says the Chassam Sofer. You know who argued about this point? Avraham and Sarah. They argued about this. When? It was the third day of Abraham's Milah, and Abraham sees 3 orchem, 3 guests. So Abraham says to Sarah, Mahari, quickly, Shalosh, Se'in, Kemach, Soiles. Bring 3 measurements of Kemach, coarse flour, not such fine flour, Soiles, fine flour, Lushi, bake it, Vasiyugos, make cakes. V'el habaka ratz Abraham. Abraham ran to the cattle. Why? Why didn't he have Sarah prepare the meat? Because the Gemara says a woman cannot shecht. A woman cannot slaughter. Why? Because we cannot rely on a woman to check the knife. Because noshim atzlanios heim. Women are lazy. That's what the Gemara says.
So,
Lazy.
according to this logic,
Now, I don't know. Nowadays we think, maybe it's got switched. But that's what the Gemara says. Women, you can rely on them to do a tedious thing.
so how can you rely on them about the other stuff?
In fact, the Gemara says you can't rely on them. This is a chiddush. You can't rely on them for bedikas chametz.
You cannot rely on them in anything.
Some things you
Other
can.
things you depends on them.
You can't rely. Meaning, in other words, if your wife says she checked the house for chametz, you still got to do it. The man has to do it. You can't rely on a woman because she's not going to get in the nooks and crannies. She's not going to get in the holes. That's what the Gemara says. She's not going to do the job in a thorough way. That's what the Gemara says. So therefore, Sarah was charged with baking the bread, but Abraham got the shechita knife ready. Says the Gemara in Chulin, what does it mean? Shlosh se'im kemach soles. Kemach is coarse flour. Soles is fine flour. Which one did Abraham want? Did he want to give the orchim bread of coarse flour, or did he want to give him bread with fine flour? So the Gemara says like this. Abraham tells Sarah, make the flour coarse. Don't grind it again and again and again and again. Zrizim akdimim lemitzvahs. You have guests over here, so the bread won't be the most delicious bread in history. But you got to feed them. Maybe they'll leave. Just give them the bread. Sarah starts sifting it. The Ramban says with 13 sifters. Yud Gimel Nafeh. 13 again and again and again and again. The bread never made it to the archim. Why? Chazal say Sarah was pierced a nida. She became a nida. The bread became tameh, and the bread never made it. Abraham says, look what happens when you paskin like the Chacham Tzvi and you try to do the mitzvah in the right way. No. You have to go like the Radvaz. When you have time to do a mitzvah, you do it right away even if it's not so good. Abraham says to Sarah, says the Medrash, V'lechem atzlos. What do we say in Eishes Chayil? V'lechem atzlos lo sochel. Lazy bread, you're not going to eat it. Lechem atzlos lo sochel.
I bet she was on it.
She shouldn't have done it. She shouldn't have done it. She should have realized, who knows what's going to happen. You have opportunity in the mitzvah, try to do it. Try to do it. Says Chassam Sofer, what does it mean? Im ein Kemach, ein Torah. Doesn't say im ein soles, ein Torah. Im ein Kemach, ein Torah. Why? If not, what does Kemach represent? Zrizos. Just do like Abraham. Just do the mitzvah. Do it. Don't be so careful to make sure it's 100% perfect. Because if you wait, you never know what's going to happen. Im ein Kemach, ein Torah. Okay. Listen to this. You know what the big zechus it was for Esther to rule over 127 medinos? She provided the protection to the Jewish people in all 127 medinos. Her zechus was that wherever Jews were around the world, she protected them. So says Chassam Sofer, wouldn't it have been much better off for the Jews not to be scattered in 127 medinos? Let them be in one, just in the city of Shushan. That would have been much better for them. Says Chassam Sofer, we have a tradition that when the Jews learn Torah, but they learn it with laziness, with atzlos, with sluggishness, God scatters them. That's what the pasuk says. Tachas ashalo avadatas Hashem lo'akecha b'simcha ve'avadatas oyevecha. God scatters them. Okay? So in other words, the Jews merited protection in the zechus of Esther. Esther protected her merit of ruling over 127 medinos was she provided the protection for the Jews. However, her protection was limited because they would have been better off being in one place. Why do they have to be scattered? Apparently, and the Gemara tells us in Megillah, that the whole decree of Haman came on the Jews because they learned Torah, but it was with atzlos, it was with laziness, it was with sluggishness, it was not with excitement, it was not with enthusiasm. That's why the Gemara says in look at number 16, that bi'atzaltayim yimach hamakara. The whole reason God brought the decree of Haman on the Jews is because they learned Torah in a they were unengaged. They were not involved. It was not exciting to them. It was not meaningful to them. They sat back, they listened, but it was not something that got their blood flowing. So Chassam Sofer says, if the Jewish people in that time did not merit to be in one central location, they were scattered all over the world because of their laziness, then in whose merit was Esther Zocha to rule over the 127 medinos? It cannot have been in Abraham's zechus, because Abraham is the master of Kemach, of zrizos, of energy, right? If the Jewish people were scattered all over the world, obviously it was not in the zechus of Abraham Avinu. Because if it would have been in Abraham's zechus, they wouldn't have had to be scattered all over the world. They could have been in one central location. So if Chazal see that the Jews are scattered everywhere, it's obviously not in the zechus of Sarah, of Abraham Avinu. It must be in the zechus of Sarah Imenu. So it wasn't in the merit of Abraham's 127 righteous years, because Abraham's 127 righteous years would have allowed the Jews to enjoy being in one central location. Says Rabbi Akiva to his Talmidim, think for a moment. Why did she merit to rule over 127 medinos? She couldn't tap into Abraham's zechus. She had to tap into Sarah's zechus, because Sarah had that element of laziness. Laziness, Rabbi say, wake up. That's why Rabbi Akiva tried to wake up his Talmidim with the Chazal, that in what merit did Esther have to rule over 127 medinos? It was in the zechus not of Abraham, because Abraham's merit was rizus. Like Chassam Sofer says, "Amein Kemach ein Torah." If not for the midah of rizus, you don't have Torah. Sarah, what did Sarah do? Sarah said, "Soles, let's grind it very fine, grind it again and again and again and again." But ultimately, the lechem atzlos lo sochel. The bread never came out, because it's better, like the Rabbi says, to do the mitzvah right away than to wait and do it in a better way. Says Chassam Sofer, we'll end with this. Where is there a remez in the Chumash to the Yom Tif of Purim? V'lakachta soiles. You'll take fine flour, because the whole merit of Purim was not in Kemach. Was not Kemach. It was soles. It was in the merit of Sarah Yimenu. Abraham said what? Lushi, Kemach. Sarah is the one who said soles. It was in the merit of the Baal HaSoles, the one who said Soles, that we were Zochet to be protected in the 127 Medinos, but we had to be scattered because we had that element of Atzlos. So what we're learning is that in Ein Kemach Ein Torah. And if a person wants to really be successful in learning, sometimes late at night, you're tired, you had a long day, but if you energize yourself, in Ein Kemach Ein Torah, but in Yesh Kemach, if you're able to energize yourself, you'll merit to achieve and be successful in your Torah. Shkoyach.
Now, when Rabbi Akiva said that, the student understood it immediately, or
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.